What's up, Nerf Herders? Hope you are all doing well out there today. If you are new to my channel and you like the content, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. The support is greatly appreciated. And today we are going to talk about why bringing Emperor Palpatine back into the mix for Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, is a phenomenal idea. And the first thing I want to touch base on this topic with is the fact that this movie is not only concluding this new sequel trilogy, but this is the wrap of the 9-film arc of the Skywalker saga. So there's a lot going on in this here. And really the best way to wrap this up, you've got to pull something from the past here, or something has to come in that's going to change the game a little bit. And bringing the Emperor back in accomplishes everything, because this ties back from the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, and can be an ongoing thread through the sequel trilogy, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But to bring this whole 9-movie arc to a conclusion, this would work out perfectly, because really, what has the Skywalker saga been about in the long run here? It's really been the struggle of the Skywalkers and the Palpatine, not the Palpatine, just Emperor Palpatine himself. So looking at that, you had Anakin Skywalker struggling against that pull to the dark side as he was being manipulated by Palpatine, eventually succumbs to that, becomes Darth Vader, gets his redemption by overthrowing the Emperor. In the midst of that, Luke was in the process of being seduced by the dark side, and Palpatine, the same way his father was able to resist that there, even though he went a little bit dark side mode to take Vader out at the end of Jedi, for sure. I love that moment there when he kind of pauses after putting Vader down, and he kind of like realizes what's going on and centers himself again. And he just says to the Emperor, like, no, dude, you failed. I'm a Jedi like my father before me. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about that. It's one of the greatest moments in film history. So Luke, Skywalker overthrows the Emperor in a sense right there, because he had so much faith in his father, Anakin, that he would come back, find that little trickle of light that was still within him, and get that redemption. So it's a beautiful moment, and that takes us through Return of the Jedi. And now we get in through the sequel trilogy. Now, bringing the Emperor in is a good tie from the prequels and the original trilogy, but how does that play into the sequel trilogy here? Are they going to play this in a sense where the Emperor just pops up in this movie and it's going to be fan service, or are we going to learn things new that when we go back and watch The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, it's going to have a little bit of a different feel to it because of what we're going to find out in The Rise of Skywalker? So these are a couple of things that I think would be interesting for them to play with a little bit, and just, further tries to cement why I feel this is a great decision. Now, I was at Star Wars Celebration, and luckily this time around, I've been to the last 5, but luckily this time around it was in Chicago, which is about an hour south for me, so it was local and easy to get to, so it was nice not having to do like the full travel and paying for hotels and all that, so it's great. But I was in an overflow room for the live panel, and when they show that shot with, all of our new heroes here overlooking into this ocean, and you see the wreckage of the second Death Star laying in there, that was enough. And then you've got, Luke's dialogue over the top of that as he's narrating, kind of a throwback to The Last Jedi, just saying no one's ever really gone. So there's so many things that are kind of going through your head in that moment there. When the screen cuts black and then you hear that sinister cackle of the Emperor, unbelievable. I mean, I've got goosebumps thinking about it right now. I just completely freaked out, and I know everyone had a very similar reaction to that. So here's some things that I think would be interesting for them to play with. So the Skywalkers and Palpatine have really been this ongoing thread. That's really the good versus evil pull that we've had throughout this entire saga, with the exception of the sequel trilogy here. So how can they tie this in to make this a little bit more relative as to where the Emperor has been? Because given that the Emperor is alive, or some new embodiment of himself, because remember, he does know how to cheat death. This would be a great tie-in to Revenge of the Sith when he's talking to Anakin. My favorite moment of the prequels, for sure. But he's having that conversation there with Anakin, explaining to him the story of Darth Plagueis, basically stating, this guy tapped into these unnatural powers of the dark side and eventually learned how to cheat death. And that was really Palpatine's manipulation tool to Anakin to get him to be intrigued and push him a little bit more towards that side, because he was so obsessed with saving Padme and the fear of losing Padme. So it really would tie in beautifully, and it's a great callback to the prequels, because if they can show that Palpatine either cheated his death when Vader threw him down the Death Star at the end of Jedi, or found a way to reincarnate himself in a different fashion, or perhaps even, a Sith ghost. We'll see. Time will tell. But just a couple things going through my head with this. Now, to get this into the sequel trilogy, here's a couple of things. Now, Rey being in the fold here, when Anakin was a little boy, he was basically a manipulation of the Force in a sense. The mom, there was no father, kind of the Jesus story with everything. And with Rey, we still don't really know where she comes from. I think J.J. Abrams is going to ignore The Last Jedi as much as possible and make this his own. Still honoring, like he has said in interviews now, still honoring what has happened, but not fully, embracing everything that has happened in that movie. So the fact that Kylo is talking to Rey, telling Rey, your parents were nobody, they were junkers, who knows? Who knows what the case? That could be it, but Rey might have been a creation of the Force through Palpatine. Maybe that was Palpatine's answer to create this counterbalance to Kylo Ren. There's so many ways this could potentially go, and the parents just gave her up because maybe she didn't mean anything to them. Maybe she was adopted by them. There's things that can be done in a sense to make this, do something different for Rey's parentage. The other thing with this too is you've got Kylo Ren, who's got Vader's helmet, and he's talking to the helmet in The Force Awakens, basically just, I'm going to finish what you started, show me the way, grandfather. Now, one thing I thought about after The Force Awakens was done is, how come Anakin Skywalker doesn't show up at some point as a ghost? And we don't have to see this on camera, this could have been an off-camera thing, I mean, whatever. Why does he not show up to his grandson and go, hey man, like, it's all good. You don't got to do any of this shit anymore. Like, I got my redemption. I'm a Jedi. I went good. Like, what you're doing is pointless. You don't have to finish anything I started, because I realized that was, a terrible thing that I had done, and I'm past that. It's always something I wondered why Anakin wouldn't show up to do that. Now, the answer to that could potentially be that the Emperor has been manipulating Kylo Ren through the helmet. Maybe he's been talking to him through the helmet. Maybe he's been encouraging and pushing and and really kind of like driving Kylo Ren to the edge with this. Now that gets us to Snoke as well. Was Snoke a new character, or was Snoke just some kind of a physical embodiment of the Emperor in a sense? I think it'd be really interesting if Snoke was the Emperor almost, and he was being utilized just to push Kylo Ren as far as he possibly could go, because a lot of this stuff is Snoke really just kind of being an asshole to Kylo Ren and doing everything he can to push him. That would help explain why, the throne room scene in The Last Jedi kind of occurred the way that it did. It still is kind of silly to me how Snoke, being as powerful as he is with everything, didn't realize that Kylo was manipulating him in that moment and then driving the lightsaber through him. So this would help explain some of that was just a manipulation tactic to push Kylo Ren over to where he needed to be to fully embrace himself. So it would just be interesting how they do some of this stuff, because I think the way that they could talk about Palpatine and where he's been and whatever the case might be could definitely change the way that we look at The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Now, when they're looking at the Death Star wreckage at the end of this teaser trailer, there's multiple reasons. Are they going there because they're taking the fight to Palpatine? Are they going there because they need to collect something from the Death Star wreckage? I would imagine Vader's lightsaber could have went down with the wreckage, so maybe they need to collect the crystal. There could be so many things as to why that they're there, but it would make perfect sense if the Emperor's just been kind of hiding out there, manipulating everything, because that's ultimately where he went down, and that's still where his throne room is. So just very, very interesting stuff here. There's a lot to kind of, take into place with this. And one thing I've seen some people talk about is how if the Emperor is still alive or still around in some sense, it kind of retcons Vader or Anakin gaining his redemption back in Return of the Jedi. I 100% disagree with that statement. I couldn't agree or disagree with that anymore. Vader making that decision, or turning back to Anakin and overthrowing the Emperor and dropping him down that chute to save his son, it doesn't matter if the Emperor lives or dies from that, or dies and comes back, whatever the case might be. None of that matters. he did the act. It was, you know, out of love for his son, and it all happened like that. That's a real thing. It doesn't retcon anything. The Emperor is that powerful, where he learned how to cheat that death, or you know, reincarnate himself in some fashion, or come back as a Sith ghost, learn a way to do that. It doesn't retcon anything that, you know, Vader slash Anakin did at the end of Return of the Jedi. So I 100% disagree with that. But those are just a couple of my thoughts with this here. I love the fact that they're bringing the Emperor back in. Such an iconic character, and you know he's really the greater evil that we've had throughout this entire saga. So it leaves a lot of open doors here. We've had the Kylo Ren, we've had the Rey thing going on for 2 movies now, where Rey's gotten the best of him twice. We don't need to see that a third time in a row. There's not much to be desired with that whole storyline. So it would be interesting having the Emperor come back into the fold, and now you've got a greater evil where you can play a couple of different options here. You can get the redemption story arc for Ben, and maybe he dies in that process. Maybe Rey dies, and Ben is the Skywalker that rises up. You know, there's so many things that could kind of play into this here. I would love to see a redemption arc for Ben, but it's got to be handled properly. It can't just be this simple. He's gains his redemption, and now it's for the better of the two, because we kind of saw that in The Last Jedi. That almost kind of happened in The Last Jedi when he kills Snoke. They cock teased us a little bit right there, where we were like, holy shit, this is actually happening. Where's it going to go from here? And then they kind of pulled the strings back on that real quick. So they can't do it in a simple fashion. It needs to have some weight bearing to it. And I really trust JJ and what he's going to do with this here. But it leaves that opportunity open. You know, it leaves the opportunity open that if there's some connection between Rey and Palpatine, maybe Rey gets seduced. You know, there's so many things that could happen with this here. I just hope that they're going to utilize this in the best way possible, and I really do trust JJ in doing that. So those are my thoughts on this up front here. Love to know what you guys are thinking about this whole thing too. I know there's surprisingly kind of a split audience with this. I'm 100% in love with this idea. I know there's other people that have concerns with everything too, but I love it. So leave some comments down below, guys. Let's join the discussion. I'd love to talk with you all about this here. And again, if you're new to the channel, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you all very much for watching. May the Force be with you. I will catch you all next time.